Hello and welcome to today's video on public transportation system. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a little introduction into what public transportation is all about. We are also going to be looking into the different types of public transport, and that will also lead us to understanding the importance of this public transport in our modern day life and the possible challenges that we might encounter in the use of public transportation, and we're also going to be looking at the innovations in this system. What are the possible innovations, and also the sustainability and the environmental impact of public transportation. Then the lastly, we are also going to be looking at the future of transportation system. So these are the various points we are going to be looking at in this video today. And there is no way we're going to be looking or talking about public transportation without first understanding the concepts behind public transportation. From the word itself, public transportation, public transport, that is a transport that is made for the general public. And these are usually controlled by the government, whether it's this on the state level or the national level. It is usually controlled by the government. And in most cases, some people call it, yeah, public transport. It can also be called maybe public transit. It's usually called mass transit, or probably we can just call it transit. So let's just go into. So as we can see here, it's talking about a shared transportation service that are available to the general public. And not just that it's available to the general public. One beautiful thing about the public transportation system or a public transport is that it works on a routine, on a schedule, and you can also say it's on a fixed price, so, or a fixed fare. So there are three things that we need to look into, or we ought to take into consideration when we're talking about the public transportation, which makes it different from every other forms of or every other transportation system. That is, it operates on a fixed schedule. There is a fixed schedule for it, and it also operates on a given route. So when there is a set route for it, it doesn't go out of that route when it comes to the movement, the daily movement of that particular public transport. And another thing is that there is a fixed fare, that is the amount of money the general public pays in order to use that particular public transport. So it's usually fixed. So these are three attributes or three characteristics that we can say, other than the fact that it is open to the general public and it is managed and controlled by the government, which can be in the state or the national level. But also it's usually on a schedule base and it operates on a set route. There are some cases whereby the route might change, and that might not be applicable for all public transportation system. For example, I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was heading out and I took a public transport, which is the bus rapid transport. And I noticed that the bus was not taking the regular or the set route. And that is as a result of there is a maintenance happening on that road at that particular time. So the bus took an alternative road just because of that construction or that program that was holding in that particular area at that particular time. So that can be a little bit flexible when we're talking about the bus transport, but it might not be applicable to some other forms of transport when we're talking about the rail, when we're talking about the high speed rail, when we're talking about the train, these other forms of public transport. It might be difficult to use an alternate or alternative route in that case. So all we are trying to say is that even when some of these abnormalities like the that can happen if we're talking about some street public transport like the bus, whereby they are quite a little bit flexible when it comes to using alternative route, it might not be applicable in the general sense when we're talking about other public transportation. Just like I said with the trams, when we're talking about the train, when we're looking into the high speed rail and some other ones. So that is a little introduction into public transport. And there are types of public transport. Like I already explained, we have the buses. Yes, we can see that on the road. They also work with a fixed amount of fair price. We know they pass through a set route and also work on a schedule. You will see in some cases, for when we're looking at the bus, you see you can have a regulation that the bus starts or they move from 6 a.m. in the morning and they close by 7 p.m. at night. So when there is a strict schedule, for me to be able to get the bus, I have to be at the bus station maybe by 6 a.m. Anything 3 minutes, 5 minutes past that 6 a.m., then I know that I might not meet the bus. So they work on a fixed schedule. And not just that there is a fixed price. There is a certain amount of money. If I am paying $1, if I'm paying 200 naira, if I am paying to RMB, whatever amount it is, it's for a certain route moving from a point to another point. And one thing is that we know that all those buses, still on the bus, all these buses, we have different types of buses who operating within a city. And those buses work on a different route, on separate routes, specific route. When we have bus 22, we know bus 22 move from location A to location B. Then when we have bus 7 might walk from location C to location D. So these buses work with a straight schedule and a straight route. So that is one of the characteristics of the public transport, in which I already explained earlier. And the types of public transportation, like I said, we have the buses, we also have the trains. I think most of us are quite used to the public transport when it comes to buses and trains compared I think that varies in countries and in cities. So train is also another type of public transport, and that we know for sure that it works in a fixed schedule, route, and also the price. Then we have the subway. It's also a type of public transport. Then we have the trams. I think this for trams, people tend to mix up the trains with a tram. I think I get this question very much often, that what is the difference between a train and a tram? We can see from the slide here, it says streetcars. Yes, it has its own rail, it has its own path in which it takes, but even when it works, it's on the road. You see it um on the road with maybe other vehicles, but it works on a specific um rail or a specific route, which makes it different from trains. So it's the much more bigger picture of the tram is when we talk about looking at the trains. But for trams can work within the city. It can work within a system where we have other vehicles, we have other forms of transportation, and the ferries, that has to do with the water transportation. So, but I think we also have when it comes to other modes of transport, but for now we're wholly focusing on these types of transport. There is no way we are going to be looking into the importance of public transportation in modern cities without understanding the concept of traffic congestion. What are the factors that brought about the introduction of public transportation? One of the things is, if every household decides to buy a car or own a car, we know the effect of that on the road when it comes to the volume of vehicles on the road. And this can lead to traffic congestion, it can lead to traffic jam when there are too many vehicles on the road. So in order to reduce the vehicles on the road and also to reduce the number of traffic congestion, it is one of the reasons why we have the introduction of public transportation. Not just about the reduction of the traffic congestion or the number of vehicles on the road, but also looking into the fare price. If I am going to be taking a taxi, or if I am to take a Didi or an Uber, there is a certain amount of money I will pay from location A to location B. Maybe let's just say in different currencies. In my country's currency, maybe you might be charged maybe 10,000 naira. Maybe in dollars, maybe it might be around, maybe let's say $15 or $20, and maybe in renminbi we might have it maybe within 15 to 20 renminbi. Let's just say, for example. But for that same movement or movement from that location A to location B, if we are going to be making use of a public transport, for naira, you might not spend more than, let's just say, an average of, let's say 500 naira. In dollars, maybe less than a dollar, or let's say a dollar. And in renminbi, maybe just one renminbi or two kwai, or maybe two renminbi. So one thing is, it's not only performing the function of reducing the traffic congestion, but it also helps to reduce many people at once moving. Like this, the idea of many people moving together in a bus, reducing the number of vehicles on the road, and also giving it at a fair price. So the public transit helps to reduce the number of private vehicles or private cars on the road, and making traffic flow more smooth. Like, it's the traffic flow becomes much more efficient, it becomes much more effective compared to when the lack of introduction of public transportation. So this is one of the big roles in which public transport or public transportation plays in modern cities. Because for modern cities, we know that the population of people in modern cities are on the high side compared to some other cities. And not only that, there is a need for transport. There is a need to engage in a mode of transport daily, as a result of people going to school, as a result of people going to work, engaging in one activities or the other. So the need for transportation is of high demand, and as a result of that, the introduction or the one of the basic importance of public transport is to help reduce traffic congestion and to make traffic flow efficient. The next point we have here is to protect the environment. When we're talking about the protection of the environment, for example, I'm going to be using Nigeria as a case study here. Most of the vehicles, or let me say, all the vehicles we have that operate in Nigeria, makes use of the fuel as they make use of fuel. So there is nothing like electric vehicles. So using a petrol or using a fuel or diesel in for those transportation, or let me just say for those vehicles or those cars, releases a lot of carbon monoxide, that is gas emission, into the society, into the community, into the environment. And when there is too much of this, it can lead to other health conditions. So when we can reduce the number of vehicles as a result of public transport, so in a public transport, for example, in a public transport, we have having a capacity of maybe 30 or 40 people. And that 30 or 40 people, on an average, we can say, without public transport, maybe 30 of that 40 people might have make use of a private car. And the emission of carbon monoxide from those private cars might release or lead to higher volume of carbon emission in the environment. So one of the importance of public transportation here is the protection of the environment. As a result of fewer cars means lower greenhouse gas emission, and it improves the air quality, and this also helps in supporting climatic goals. So this is another importance of public transport. The next one we have is cost effective mobility. Not everyone has all it takes or has the financial power to own a vehicle or whatever means of transportation or mode of. Not everyone has that power to. We don't Everyone are not earning the same amount of money. So the chances of everyone having that access to transportation might be limited without the help of public transportation. So this helps to provide an affordable transportation option for everyone, especially those who cannot afford private vehicles. So they know, when if you can't afford private vehicles, then you can use um, a public transport. That is quite common in most African countries. Also in Nigeria, which is my country, it is very common because most people cannot afford a private vehicle, so they result into public transportation, in which most of the time is called the BRT when it comes to the bus, and we also have the trains. So not just that, I think in also other developed countries, I think some people just find it very comforting to make use of public transport even than owning a private car. And it's also another very common system in China, where you get to see the public transport is one of the predominant mode of transport for people. And also not just when it comes to the bus, you can see it with when it comes to the e-bike, the scooters, you see it with the uh, electronic bikes, e-bikes, you see it with the bicycles, all these things are public, are made for the available for the general public to use. And as a result of that, it makes it very easy for everyone to have access to for transportation, for accessibility to for movement. So that is another importance of public transportation in modern cities. Then the next point is it promotes social equity. So that is irrespective of your income, irrespective of your age, irrespective of your status, irrespective of your ability, everyone have access to transportation. Everyone have access to mobility and city service. They have access to it. So whether you're rich, whether you an average income, whether you're poor, we all have equal access to mobility. So that is one of the importance of public transportation. It bridges the gap between the rich and the poor when it comes to transportation accessibility and mobility. So that is how it helps to promote social equity. And the next point is it supports economic growth. That is, it helps people to connect to their jobs, it helps people to connect to schools, it helps them to connect to their businesses, it helps them to connect to whatever services, and it helps to boost local economics. So, because as a result of making the as a result of having the public transportation in place, it makes people going to their jobs, it makes it very easy for them to navigate or to go to their workplace. And it also helps them for those going to school. We've seen what we call the public school bus. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen them going for businesses, making use of the public transportation to go for any business they are into, and maybe rendering any services. So public transportation has helped to promote and to support economic growth as a result of ease in mobility for all that are for the general public. And the last point here is encourage healthy lifestyle, or yes, healthy lifestyle. So you can see people can easily walk from their houses to the bus station, or walk from their houses to wherever the transit stops are. And as a result of that, it helps them to be able to engage in that little exercise from their homes or from their origin to wherever the bus station is before making use of the public transport. Compared to when for people who owns a private vehicle, the moment they step out of their rooms, they are just going into their vehicles and they zoom off. So it does not give room for that little moment where they can walk for to encourage a healthy living and to encourage a bit of exercise. But even when this might not be one of the prominent importance of public transportation, but still it cannot be left out, as it helps people to engage in that little exercise in movement from their houses. Maybe it's a 10 minute walk, whether it's a 15 minute walk, whether it's a 5 minute walk from their houses to the transit stops or the bus station before using the public transport. And this helps to promote more physical activities. There is no way we will look into the challenges facing public transportation without first looking into the funding and the maintenance costs. Let's take it one at a time. Funding. The project or public transportation projects are usually capital intensive. That is, it requires a lot of capital. It requires a lot of money, millions of dollars, billions of naira. It takes a whole lot to set up a public transportation system, because we're looking at when we if we are to focus on buses, we're looking at maybe hundreds of thousands of buses. We're talking looking about setting up the the route system, and knowing fully well that the cost or the fair prices of all these public transport are usually uh, uh, a small amount of money compared to when you make use of the private vehicles or other forms of or other means of transportation. So the funding is one of the biggest challenges facing public transportation. So we know that public transportation has a lot of importance, like some of which we were able to look into in the previous slide, but still it suffers from funding, and that funding can help either alleviate the traffic flow or help a lot of most of the public when it comes to affordable mobility, or derail it, just like it's one of the challenges. And also another thing is the maintenance cost. It is not easy to maintain some of this public transportation. Looking at the buses, looking at the trams, looking into the trains, it's a little bit on the high side when it comes to the maintenance of this transportation. So it's also another challenge that is facing public transportation. The next point here is coverage. We know coverage and accessibility issues. Insufficient coverage of public transit service is one of the major barriers to accessibility, particularly when we are looking into the suburbans and the rural areas. We know that some of these areas they suffer due to less demand, resulting into inadequate or non-existent public transit services because of the locations. We have seen in some when you look at some remote places, looking at some villages, looking at some suburbans and some rural areas, we will notice that there is no form of public transportation. And even when we're looking into the importance of public transportation, we're only looking at it in regards to modern cities, because we believe that it is much more important, or it is much more in demand in modern cities or in big cities compared to the suburbans or the rural areas. And that is as a result of the demand, less demand, or maybe looking at the population of those areas. And due to that, it's either it is non-existent or it is inadequate in all those environments or in that kind of community. Going back to the first point when we are talking about the funding and the maintenance cost, so this plays a role in the second point, which is the coverage, because it is of high maintenance. Public transportation are of high maintenance and it requires a lot of funding. So, as a result of that, it is usually executed or it is usually implemented in areas that we know that there is high demand for that form of transport. So, the next point we have here is overcrowding. Mhm. I think we there is no way we will look into the aspect of overcrowding. I think it's something we've experienced coming from uh, my own country. We've experienced the case of overcrowding in the use of public transport. There are some bus rapid transport, that is some of the bus public transportation, that the capacity is let's say for example the capacity is 40 passengers, but we see in some cases whereby some of these buses they have this overcapacity of taking in about 60 passengers, 50 passengers, 55 passengers, taking beyond what they can, beyond the stipulated um, number of passengers for those vehicles. And this can, in most cases, can be very annoying, and not only annoying, but it also raises a lot of concerns about safety and health. When a bus or a train is overcrowded, it can become a breeding ground for diseases. Most especially, we could see that during the times of the COVID-19. We can't just trying to imagine what it would look like in that situation. It also increases the risk of accidents and compromises the comfort of the passengers. So when there is more demand for public transport and we have the demand exceeds the supply, that is the number of vehicles are lesser to the demands, that is the number of people who really wants to use the service. So that is when we get to see this case of overcrowding, where you see a lot of people. We've seen in some cases, not just only with bus alone, we can see it with some trains in some developing countries or underdeveloped countries. So when inside of the train, when it's filled up, you see people sitting at the on top of the trains, which poses a lot of security issues, and which can lead to the endangering of lives of some of the passengers. And that is one of the biggest challenge, also one of the challenges facing public transportation. That is the supply meeting the demand. Another point here is the aging infrastructure. We know that some of these structures or some of these infrastructures or some of these public transportation infrastructures, they have been set up for a while, and as a result of that, we see over the years they start aging. Now when they start aging, the performance level of some of these transport systems start declining, it starts reducing. And when the aging infrastructure and poor maintenance comes into play, it can lead to frequent service disruption, it can lead to compromise of safety, it can lead to deter people when it comes to the use of public transit. I think I've experienced a case whereby people make you were using a public transport, and along the line the bus stopped as a result of maybe technical faults, as a result of the aging of some of these buses. So this reduces people's confidence, or it reduces their trust in the use of public transport. And this is one of the challenges of public transportation, that is the aging infrastructure poses one of a big challenge in the use of public transport. And the last point here we have is the safety and security concerns. It is very important for people to be able to say, I can confidently make use of a public transportation without worrying about my safety. But we know in some cities, in some countries, that is not the case. People need to feel safe while using public transportation, and concerns about personal safety, especially during late hours, can prevent many from utilizing these services. I can say for a fact that maybe in some countries that is well covered, maybe countries like China, we can see it is well covered, where you can see that there is a lot of safety and some security uh, systems that are in place to make sure that people have that confidence in the use of public transportation. But that cannot be said about some other under and developing countries, because of as a result of this, you see people finding it very difficult to make use of the public transport and prefer making use of a private vehicle, or making or ordering a ride, even though it's going to cost more. But they know that their safety is guaranteed that way compared to the use of public transport. We've seen in some advanced countries the introduction of CCTV cameras even inside some of this public transports, be it a bus, be it the trains, be it the trams. You can see there are CCTVs there. You see, to the point that some of these transportation system even have a stand-in security officer in them. You see, in some trams, in some trains, there are security personnel inside them, which helps for people to feel safe while using them. So this can also stand as a challenge that faces public transportation. So we are now going to be looking into the innovations and the technologies. And here we know we have the electric and hybrid buses. And even when this is not common in all countries, but we can see it in some developed countries, this is quite common in China. You see some electric and hybrid buses making use of electric rather than making use of fuel for its movement. So another one is smart ticketing. That is, we don't necessarily need to go to the ticket booth in order to get a ticket or a physical ticket. This can be done maybe the use of your mobile phones, contactless payment, and use of some mobile apps. So there are some mobile apps that has been set up in order to make this very much easier. So these are some of the innovations and technologies that has been developed over the years. And we also have the real-time tracking and information system. So you can track the movement of a particular vehicle, of a particular transportation system, public transportation system. Most of the cases, I think you see in some of the buses, there are some applications whereby you can just log in into it will show you the buses or the transport and the public bus that will be available to you in the next few minutes. You show you the movement, where it is at the moment, how long it will take before it gets to your particular stop or your particular station. So this helps people to be able to track, okay, can I wait? How long is it going to take? Where is the bus now? When is it going to be getting to or arriving at where I am going? So this real-time tracking and information system is very much important, and I think it's one of the biggest innovations and technologies that has been developed when it comes to the use of public transportation system, because it has really been of help to a lot of people. People can easily plan themselves. They can easily they can be definitive about the time they will leave a particular place and the time they will get there. And also, if there is any form of delay, there is always an information system in place to that is being provided for passengers or users on those applications or any form of system in place. Then we have the autonomous shuttles. We know this is more like a self-driving vehicle designed to transport passengers, so this is also some of the innovations and technologies whereby you don't necessarily have to have a driver. You see some of these buses, they don't have a driver, but they are self-driving vehicles. And the last point here is the integration with ride sharing services, so where people can easily share rides, and so these are some of the innovations and technologies used in public transportation. So there is no way we will be looking into public transportation system without looking at the sustainability and the environmental impact. I know I said something earlier on this when we're looking into the importance of public transportation, but beyond that is, yes, we know reduction of greenhouse gas emission, that is the carbon monoxide from vehicles. It might not be so common in some other countries because most of them make use of electric vehicles. But when we are talking about places like Nigeria, Africa, and some other even European countries that still make use of fuel, that is, which leads to the emission of carbon monoxide. Making use of a public transportation helps to reduce that gas emission. So it is very important. And another thing is the lower energy consumption per passenger. So the kind of energy consumption that 50 people or 100 people would have had if they made use of a private vehicle, that will be reduced when all of them, or maybe we have maybe two vehicles or two buses for those set of people, or maybe making use of the train or tram. So there is this lower energy consumption on the basis of per passenger when we have the calculation done. Then it promotes sustainable urban planning. It helps to be able to plan effective planning of the urban areas as a result of some of the sustainability and environmental impact. And the last point is support climate goals. It can to reduce the help to protect the ozone layer, and so these are some of the sustainability and environmental impacts of public transportation. Here we have the future of public transportation. We know it has to do with more electric fleets. You can see, even for countries that are making use of electric vehicles, they are trying as much as possible to improve more on these aspects, and that is the introduction of more electric fleet. Then greater integrations with micro mobility like this, that is e-scooters and bikes. This is another possible future for public transportation. Yes, some of these um, are already in use in some other countries, but still there are some other countries that they still see this as the future of public transportation in their cities or in their countries. Another one is the expanded smart city connectivity, the ability to connect within cities. That is possible, and another possible future of public transportation. Then personalized and flexible transit options, that is when it can be personalized and all these options are flexible enough for passengers or the public to be able to decide which one they want to opt for. When you want to move from location A to location B, you have to look at what are the possible options. If I want to make use of a vehicle, or if I want to make use of the bus, if I want to make use of a scooter, if I want to make use of an e-bike, if I want to make use of the train, if I want to make use of the tram. So there are possible options, and all these things are personalized enough, giving you different options to pick from in order to achieve the best when it comes to the price and also the expected time of to arrive at the destination. So these are some of the futures of public transportation. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.